Tonight, a CBC News exclusive. MP Chris D'Entremont on the moment he says he decided to defect to the Liberals.
What sealed the deal is when I got yelled at.
His allegations of aggressive behavior and name-calling that the Conservatives deny, and why he says other MPs are thinking about jumping ship too. A super typhoon slams into the Philippines, sending nearly 1 million people running for their lives. Best-selling Canadian author Louise Penny on Trump's America.
I'm appalled by what's happening.
Her decision to boycott the U.S.
Now's the time. We need to stand up. We need to take this seriously.
And her latest novel that predicted the 51st state threat in the Sunday interview.
From CBC News, this is The National with Ian Hennemanson.
Tonight, in an exclusive television interview with CBC News, a Nova Scotia MP is detailing the confrontation he says cemented his decision to leave the Conservative caucus and join the Liberals. Chris D'Entremont crossed the floor last week just after the Liberals presented their budget. He says he took issue with negativity coming from the Conservative Party leadership, but that it was getting yelled at in his own office that sealed the deal. The Conservatives are disputing that and firing back. JP Tasker takes us through the allegations and the response.
After a warm reception from his new party, Nova Scotia MP Chris D'Entremont is speaking out about how he says he was treated by senior Conservatives.
What sealed the deal is when I got yelled at.
In his first broadcast interview since crossing the floor to the Liberals, D'Entremont says Conservative MPs Chris Warkentin and Andrew Scheer barged into his office. His assistant almost knocked over. When they heard he was considering joining Mark Carney's government, he says they proceeded to yell at him.
And, tell me how much of a snake I really was and turning my back on my constituents and the people that voted for me.
D'Entremont says his discontent had been brewing for some time over Pierre Poilievre's leadership style, which he describes as very negative.
Quite honestly, a lot of times I felt it was a part of a frat house rather than a serious political party. It wasn't about keeping government to account. It wasn't about trying to do the best for your constituents. It was about tearing down.
Poilievre's office is hitting back, alleging D'Entremont left the party because he didn't get a deputy speaker position. In a statement to CBC News, they called D'Entremont a liar, who is now spinning more lies after crossing the floor. He will fit in perfectly in the Liberal caucus. Hours later, the party sent out a detailed blow-by-blow of Scheer and Warkentin's version of events, disputing D'Entremont's description of the meeting, saying they entered the office calmly and spoke in a measured voice.
Mr. Carney was going to be the tight-fisted banker.
Poilievre hasn't spoken publicly about D'Entremont's departure or the abrupt resignation 2 days later of another Conservative MP, Matt Genereux, focusing instead on Carney's budget.
I feel sorry that we're in this situation, but I also think, we're only hearing part of the story from Chris.
Adam Chambers wasn't part of the alleged D'Entremont confrontation, but says these are tense times.
In the heat of a moment, you can understand how tensions would be very high when the government is on the precipice of getting a majority.
It's like high school. We see these guys showing up at his office. Like, come on.
This longtime political watcher says the Conservatives are in crisis and Poilievre's leadership is under threat.
No one should be intimidated. And so I think if that's the way that the Conservative Party handles things, no wonder people are crossing the floor.
Well, Chris D'Entremont says the aggressive behavior in that meeting is what led him to leave for the Liberals. MP Scheer and Warkentin say he told them he had already made up his mind before they sat down in his office. They also allege D'Entremont agreed with them that he was leaving because he was passed over for that deputy speakership position.
And now there's the question of whether more Conservative MPs could leave.
Yeah, D'Entremont says he isn't the only one feeling disaffected with Poilievre and his team. He says 3 or 4 more Conservatives were considering a switch to the Liberals. That would give the Prime Minister the seats he needs to form a majority government. The Liberals aren't saying much publicly, but sources say more defections are possible.
JP Tasker in Ottawa. There's been a major breakthrough in Washington, the foundation of a deal that could reopen the U.S. government. It comes after 40 days of chaos and uncertainty affecting everything from flights to food stamps. Katie Simpson joins us now from Washington to bring us the latest. And Katie, there seems to be progress on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, there is a path to reopen the U.S. government. Enough Democrats in the Senate are now supporting a bipartisan deal to fund the government until the end of January. It is not without controversy. It looks like Democrats are not getting the key demands they wanted on health care. But in this moment, it may be viewed by some as a step toward temporary relief.
By day 40 of the shutdown, the strains had become quite evident. Long waits at food banks, the surge in demand, a combination of unpaid federal workers unable to make ends meet, and fear among food stamp recipients, the program known as SNAP, would be paused.
And if we don't get SNAP until the shutdown's over, we could end up literally starving.
The showdown led to intense criticism from Democrats directed at the White House.
They have money for everything. They got money to fight wars. They got money for ballrooms. They got money for everything. But when it comes to supporting the American people, that's now when they're crying, well, we're broke.
The squeeze felt at airports across the U.S., too. Thousands of flights canceled or delayed, triggered by a shortage of air traffic controllers and other federal authorities, all working without pay. The breakthrough comes after a weekend of intense bipartisan negotiations in the Senate. Amid the uncertainty, the president spent the weekend at his Florida golfing estate, returning to Washington in dramatic style with a flyover of the local NFL stadium before taking in the game.
I just want to say, was that the greatest flyover ever? Nobody's ever done a flyover like that.
His reception from the crowd, equally dramatic.
Now, even if everything goes as planned in the Senate, there are a number of technical steps that need to happen before the government can reopen. At most, it could take a few days.
And Katie, this may be a bipartisan deal, but it's still controversial.
Yeah, Chuck Schumer, who's the top Democrat in the Senate, he is not supporting this deal because it doesn't include any sort of guarantees to extend subsidies for health care programs. Remember, that is why Democrats wouldn't support this funding plan in the first place. Democrats speaking to reporters tonight say it became more and more evident as this fight dragged on that Republicans were not willing to give in to any of their demands.
Katie Simpson in Washington. Another typhoon has raged across the Philippines, unleashing destruction and a deluge of rain. Typhoon Feng Wong made landfall earlier today on Luzon as a powerful super typhoon, slowly churning across the country's most populous island, set now to pivot north towards Taiwan. And this is less than a week after Typhoon Kalmegi tore through the country's south. This latest typhoon alone has displaced nearly 1 million people, with reports of at least 2 dead. As Lisa Shing shows us, for a country still reeling, it is another cruel blow.
As Super Typhoon Feng Wong made landfall, almost 1 million people had already been evacuated to shelters. Some of our belongings are on our roof, says Christopher Sanchez. Whenever there's a typhoon, our place gets flooded and the waters can reach over our heads. This is already the 21st named storm to strike the Philippines this year. But this is so far the largest and terrifying to many. We're scared. I have my kids with me, and my husband is still out making a living, says Krisha Simon. At times, Typhoon Feng Wong blanketed the entire country, with fierce rain and winds gusting to more than 200 kilometers an hour.
Imagine the amount of damage it can cause in terms of like landslides somewhere in the northern portion of the country, the amount of storm surge that can cause in the eastern side of our country.
Residents have barely had time to recover from the devastation wrought by another storm less than a week ago, Typhoon Kalmegi. It brought downpours and flash flooding, killed at least 200, another 5 in Vietnam. That as the Philippines was already dealing with the aftermath of 2 earthquakes earlier this month.
For these families, it feels like the recovery never really began. And, you know, these communities are reeling from layered disasters.
We're getting ready, but this is starting to test our level of experience.
Government agencies, including the National Police, Armed Forces, and Coast Guard, say they're ready.
All major service commands and unified commands have been mobilized to assist in rescue, relief, and recovery operations.
Officials say the storm could affect more than 30 million people, including in the capital, Manila. After that, it's expected to head north, threatening Taiwan later this week. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The UK is sending a military team to support Belgium's response to a recent series of unidentified drone incursions.
The UK, alongside our other 31 allies in NATO, will work to support each other, and that's why the Defence Secretary and I are very happy to see UK military personnel deployed to support Belgium.
The announcement came shortly after the latest drone disruption yesterday when a sighting briefly closed down one of the largest air freight airports in Europe, in Liège, for the second time this week. Months of similar incursions across Europe have been blamed on Russia, a charge Moscow denies. The British public broadcaster is in a state of upheaval. Both the BBC's director and the head of news have resigned tonight after the broadcaster faced allegations of biased coverage, including, as Chris Brown shows us, of U.S. President Donald Trump.
Just before the last U.S. presidential election, the BBC ran this documentary with an edited clip of Donald Trump addressing supporters before the storming of the Capitol in 2021.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Only Trump didn't actually say those words in that way. He said,
"We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women."
The Fight Like Hell section came from a different part of the speech 50 minutes later. On Tuesday, the Telegraph newspaper published a leaked internal BBC review that acknowledged the edit distorted the day's events and represented serious bias. Sunday night, both the head of the BBC, Tim Davie, and the leader of the News and Current Affairs division, Deborah Turness, resigned. There have been some mistakes made, and as Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility, Davie said in a statement.
There are a series of very serious allegations made, the most serious of which is that there is systemic bias in the way that difficult issues are reported at the BBC.
In February, the BBC aired and then pulled a documentary featuring a teen trying to survive the Gaza war, who, as it turns out, was the son of a Hamas official, which the broadcaster didn't initially say. A mistake the BBC can't afford to make, says this former head of its news division.
And the BBC has lots of enemies out there. Now, that happens. I mean, the BBC has to live with that. What it then has to do, of course, is be as good as it possibly can be.
In her departure statement, Deborah Turness pushed back, saying that while mistakes were made, the accusation that the BBC is institutionally biased is wrong. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa is in Washington ahead of his historic visit to the White House. This video of al-Sharaa playing basketball with a U.S. general and admiral was posted by his foreign minister. The U.S. had a $10 million bounty for information leading to his arrest until last year. He led a rebel group that split off from al-Qaeda and later deposed Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. He's the first Syrian president invited to Washington since 1946. Thousands of Quebec doctors and their supporters packed the NHL arena today in Montreal, protesting a new law. It changes how doctors are paid in the province. And as Sarah Levitt explains, they're so angry, many say they're considering leaving.
Montreal's Bell Centre usually hosts concerts or Habs games, but packed in on Sunday, thousands of Quebec doctors and medical specialists united against the Quebec government and a new law changing how they're paid.
It is a sport metaphor because I believe to give amazing care to the patient, you need to be at your best all the time despite difficulty, despite the fact that you're tired.
The gathering brought together doctors from across the province fighting Bill 2, Quebec's new law ties wages to performance targets like how many patients are seen in a day and emergency wait times. For this doctor, the concern is workload.
A course of measures in terms of forcing us to take on more patients than we already have. I'm already working, I have 1,500 patients. I'm already working the maximum number of hours that I can devote to my patients. We give them quality care.
The new law also includes the possibility of imposing fines if doctors use pressure tactics to protest the measures. Already, more than 300 doctors have applied for licenses in other provinces. The biggest boos at the Bell Centre were reserved for Quebec Premier François Legault and Health Minister Christian Dubé. Dubé says he recognizes there are concerns with the law, but maintains the goal is to improve access in the medical system. Last week, the government extended what it called an olive branch, suspending 2 parts of the law for now. Not nearly enough, say those at the rally.
We're stuck with this draconian, top-down law. It's not the way we want to do it.
This party-like atmosphere actually a rallying cry to prevent what these doctors are calling fast food healthcare. Quick and easy, but lacking quality. At least 2 federations have launched legal challenges, hoping to suspend parts of the new law. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
2 Major League Baseball pitchers have been indicted in the U.S., accused of accepting bribes from sports bettors to help the gamblers win. Luis Ortiz and Emmanuel Clase both pitched for the Cleveland Guardians, but they've been on leave since July when MLB noticed unusual betting activity happening when they pitched. The indictment alleges they intentionally threw certain pitches at certain speeds to help the bettors win. Some Albertans angry about the province forcing teachers back to work are trying to trigger by-elections.
I think he is serving a political agenda rather than actually doing anything for citizens.
What it would take to succeed and how the government is responding. The push to recognize an American veteran who fought for Canada in the Second World War.
He was a hero for both countries, and then he was just kind of swept under the rug.
And the Dominican Republic shows up for Vladdy Jr. We're back in 2.
Flame in the air, bicycle! Oh my God!
Heavy snow in Ottawa tonight for the Canadian Premier League final. Organizers played on despite these conditions. They used snow blowers and shovels to clear the field. The snowstorm is currently blanketing parts of southern and eastern Ontario. There's a growing movement in Alberta aimed at removing politicians from the provincial legislature. It's part of a recall process, a tool only available in a couple of provinces. Sam Sampson explains how it works and why it's being used now.
Are you here to sign the petition? This campaign isn't to get someone into office, but to force Alberta's education minister out.
I think he is serving a political agenda rather than actually doing anything for citizens. The use of the notwithstanding clause, especially in terms of the teacher strike.
Now we're going to fight for education.
Last month, Alberta used the notwithstanding clause to force teachers back to work after a 3-week strike. The clause allows governments to temporarily override charter rights. Since then, organized efforts to unseat or recall MLAs who voted in favor have popped up across the province. Both BC and Alberta allow recalls. Alberta lowered the bar earlier this year, giving more time to gather fewer required signatures. Now, if that happens, there could be a local referendum which could force a by-election.
They're being used in bad faith.
This political strategist says recall legislation was meant to address bad behavior.
It would have been the intent of the law for these to be used because somebody didn't like the outcome of the last election, and I think that's what we're seeing here today.
Alberta's education minister agrees, writing recalls should be reserved for breaches of public trust, not a shortcut to trigger a new election.
There's already been rumors about an early election here in Alberta.
This political scientist says recalls likely force the province to either walk back policy or call an early election.
These recall efforts would give the Premier another reason to go early rather than fighting a bunch of different by-elections.
So far, there are 2 greenlit petitions that have 90 days to gather signatures. When asked about them, Alberta's Premier said she heard some groups are breaking procedural rules and suggests petitions could be found invalid. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
The grandson of a Second World War veteran who deserted the U.S. to fight alongside Canadians is sharing his story.
When you see somebody actually do the type of thing he did, that is basically the definition of hero.
How Millard Tex Allison saved lives and why he ended up in prison. A Canadian best-selling author shares why she refused to take her book tour to the U.S.
My not going isn't going to change anything, but my going would be acquiescence.
And on the heels of COP30, hosts, Brazil, are promoting a shift away from oil while approving new drill sites.
The government had taken a decision to increase this production in the middle of the climate crisis.
The National breaks down the story shaping our world. Next. A national service of remembrance was held this morning in central London. King Charles led the proceedings and laid the first wreath, followed by Prince William. About 10,000 armed forces veterans took part in the Royal British Legion's March Past, alongside 20 World War II veterans. And tonight, Big Ben was lit up to commemorate 80 years since the end of the Second World War. An American soldier who fought in that war for a Canadian military unit is now the subject of another fight. His family in the U.S., along with a Canadian regiment, say he deserves to be properly honored for an incredible act of bravery. Liam Britton shows us why he was denied that.
Beneath this simple plaque lies Millard Allison, better known as Tex.
When you see somebody actually do the type of thing he did with no regard to his own safety to save the other people, that is basically the definition of hero in the military.
Allison was an American, but he joined the British Columbia Regiment in the Second World War.
Tex Allison's tank goes first.
In April 1945, he led a tank advance over a canal in western Germany. His commander's vehicle was hit and in flames. Allison ran through enemy gunfire, carried his commander to safety, then dashed back for another survivor. And despite being badly burned, Allison then sped to his own tank and fought for 2 days, destroying 3 vehicles and killing 50 enemy soldiers.
My grandfather, after the war,
Allison was nominated for a Victoria Cross, Canada's highest award for military bravery. But the medal was downgraded to a Distinguished Conduct Medal.
Tanks of the 4th Canadian Armored Div.
The regiment's historian argues it's because Allison deserted the U.S. Army before his country was at war to join the fight sooner.
There's going to be media and press, and it's probably going to come up pretty quickly that this person is missing from the United States Army. It would be best if we just quietly downgraded it.
Allison left Canada for Texas after the war. There, he was arrested for desertion.
So he was in a tank made of this metal.
And this time, it was Canadians joining his fight.
And he wrote a long and a high praise letter directly to the general in charge of the court-martial that if they didn't want him anymore, the Canadian Army would love to have him back.
But in the end, Allison was convicted. His grandson is lobbying officials in Canada, the U.S., even King Charles, to get his grandpa an honorable discharge and upgrade his medal.
He was a hero for both countries, and then he was just kind of swept under the rug.
Hand-drawn maps.
His old regiment is fundraising for a headstone, telling of his Canadian and U.S. service. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Each year ahead of Remembrance Day, CBC News speaks with the Silver Cross Mother, chosen to represent all families who have lost sons and daughters to war. In this excerpt, Nancy Payne tells Adrian about the phone call she'll never forget.
Yeah, I just never thought I'd be one of them. Yeah, but I'm very honored.
I'm sure you never thought you'd be in this position in the first place.
Exactly, yeah. I'll never forget that phone call, yeah. Dave was visiting the kids out in Wainwright. And so I was home alone in Ismore, just outside Peterborough. And the phone rang at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, and it was Randy's boss. He said, I have some information to pass on to you about Randy in Afghanistan. Well, when you get a phone call at that hour of the morning about your son, I thought maybe he was hurt. And then he told me, oh, I remember saying, oh, not Randy, oh, not my Randy, not my Randy.
Nancy, that's a lot of time to be in the house by yourself in the middle of the night with information like that in your head.
Yeah.
How did you get through that?
Well, I guess I must be stronger than I think I am.
Maybe you can sense from Nancy that she's a serious soul who can still find a smile quickly. She says that's what Randy was like too.
He always had a big grin in his eyes. He was a charmer. He really was a charmer, yeah. They do a thing on the bases there on a certain day called the pain train.
Okay.
And they have to do so many push-ups and so many sit-ups in a certain time. And I think they curse Randy every year. It's quite grueling.
He smoked them every year?
Yeah.
You can watch Adrian's full interview with Nancy Payne Monday on The National, starting from 9 p.m. Eastern on News Network, or GEM, or YouTube, or 10 p.m. local time on CBC television. Time now for the Sunday interview. Tonight, my conversation with Canadian best-selling author Louise Penny, both on her new book and her canceled U.S. tour.
Anybody can find fault. Doesn't take a genius to be critical, to be cutting in a comment, but it takes a lot more courage to be decent.
Decent is a good way to describe crime fiction author Louise Penny. And accomplished, too, even prescient.
It gets better and better and better.
Oh, well, that's, and you always hope that you do improve.
Penny has just published her 20th novel, a book of fiction that has more in common with current events than she could have imagined. I met up with her before her appearance at the Chan Centre for the Performing Arts in Vancouver, where we spoke about how life seems to be imitating art and her decision to stay away from the United States on her book tour. Back in March, you said you're not going to the United States because of President Trump's comments, policies, that sort of thing. And a lot of Canadians felt the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, I've heard some Canadians kind of stepping back, saying, well, maybe I'll go down for a vacation or a shopping trip or whatever. You've remained steadfast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, it's like situational ethics, isn't it? It's you take a stand until it becomes inconvenient, and then you decide, well, maybe just this once, and then why even bother taking the stand? It's hypocritical. I'm appalled by what's happening, by the trade war, and it is a war. And there are people, as you know, there are people watching right now who are afraid, who are losing their jobs, who are afraid of losing their jobs, the tariffs. I just think that my not going isn't going to change anything, but my going would be acquiescence.
I want to talk about the book, The Black Wolf, but I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't read it yet. So let me say, Canada-U.S. relations are very much in the forefront of this. The phrase 51st state is in this book. And I saw in the notes that you submitted your manuscript in September of 2024. Yes. Donald Trump was not president. A lot of people didn't think he was going to become president again. And then all of a sudden, you know, he does, and you hear the news and you hear him use that phrase over and over and over again. What did you think?
Part of me thought, have I gone too far? Would people be able to follow me? So as soon as he started saying that, not only, part of me, of course, was, as a human being, appalled and angered by it. As the writer, I sort of thought, well, vindicated. And when I was afraid that I had gone too far, clearly I actually hadn't gone far enough. Then I was also worried, and this might be my ego, I was worried that people would think that I'm simply following the headlines. And in fact, that's why I did the author's note at the beginning, to let people know this was written before any of this happened.
There are other things in the book that are plucked from the headlines. Climate change, for example, wildfires, devastating wildfires, disinformation, a lot about disinformation. So very contemporary themes. And also, Louise, really bleak, really depressing. What message are you hoping your readers will get?
I really think, Ian, that I don't think that there is a country that's been invaded, or a peoples who have been rounded up, or individuals who have been targeted, who haven't looked back and said, what did I miss? When was the moment when I could have done something, when I could have said something? So that's what I'm hoping people might get from this, is a bit of a wake-up call between what's written there as fiction, but what's happening in the real world is that now's the time. We need to stand up. We need to take this seriously. We can't just keep laughing at what we see, what frankly I see as a petty tyrant to the south, because anything can happen. Something tragic could be the next step.
Do you want to speak about a more pleasant topic for a while? The Eastern Townships.
Yes.
As somebody who grew up in the Maritimes and lives in British Columbia, I love the fact that your books focus on this beautiful part of the country that I don't know a lot about. I heard that when you started out as an author, somebody or some group of people suggested you not set your books in Canada or in Quebec. So why did you not listen to them?
Thick-headedness. I don't know. Do you know why? To be honest, it was because I had to write what I loved, what I believed in. And so every decision I made was and had to be personal. And that's what I did. So I wrote about a place I love. They're love letters to Canada, to the Eastern Townships. And I populated it with people I would choose as friends. And I couldn't set them anywhere else, although that was what I heard back, was that nobody would be interested in a crime novel set in Canada. And I just thought, well, then they're not interested, but I'm not going to change.
One of the charming features of the area that you call home, and it features in the book, and again, I'm not going to spoil anything, is the Haskell Free Library and Opera House. It plays a pivotal role in the book.
Yeah.
It is something many of us have seen in news coverage over the years, this charming library that straddles the border between Quebec and Vermont. It actually exists, and it's in the news again.
The U.S. is now limiting Canadian access to the iconic Haskell Free Library and Opera House.
I know, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when Kristi Noem went to the Haskell, of all places, they target a village library that sits on the border and that is symbolic of the friendship. And the borderline runs right through it, which is what makes it extraordinary. And it was built as a symbol of this relationship, the long-standing friendship we have between the United States and Canada. And she put her foot on one side of the border and said the United States, and on the other side of the border, 51st state, United States, 51st state. And it's just ludicrous. And then the irony is that it is, as you said in the book, a few of the pivotal scenes happen in the book in the Haskell Opera House. And in fact, we ended the tour with 2 events at the Haskell Opera House for that very reason, so that half of it was with the United States audience, American audience, and half of it was the Canadian audience.
Let's finish with this. In a polarized America, a book like this, with the themes that it has, are you worried at all about how MAGA, for example, is going to respond to your book?
I think to take the stand that I've done and to be as open as I have been, I think it would be ridiculous not to expect a blowback. And there has already been a little bit of it, certainly by people who support Trump. I think there will be one. I'm not worried about a physical attack, but I'm almost uniquely in the position where I can take this stand, because this won't end my career, but if it does, I've already overshot any expectations I've had for myself. So I'll just retire to my little village and I'll keep writing books for myself with my dogs at one side in front of a fireplace and go and see my friends in the cafe. So no, I'm not afraid of them.
We did that interview a couple of weeks ago. That's why we weren't wearing poppies. As for how this book is going to be received in a divided America, in a country she's not doing any book tours in, well, it debuted this week on the New York Times bestseller list at #1. The COP30 Climate Summit is set to begin, but are the hosts truly behind ending the world's dependence on fossil fuels?
Brazil is a big oil producer.
Weighing the environmental risks against the economic benefits. Next. Just 2 years out from pledging to transition away from fossil fuels, Brazil's oil production reaches a record high.
It's really a fragile region.
The financial benefit in direct conflict with concerns about the environment. With Brazil hosting the COP30 summit, international climate correspondent Susan Ormiston traveled to the country's Amazon region, where competing interests are colliding.
7 a.m. at the dock in Oiapoque, a remote corner of northern Brazil. The boat pilot is taking us far along the Oiapoque River, snaking through part of the Amazon rainforest, past river communities and mangrove swamps, to where the river meets the Atlantic Ocean. Beyond is Brazil's newest oil frontier, just as it opens the world's largest climate talks. We are off the northern tip of Brazil, and out there in the ocean is a drill ship. Petrobras, Brazil's state-owned oil company, is drilling a first exploratory well for oil. They haven't extracted any oil yet. They're measuring the reserves. It's estimated that along this Amazonian coast, the reserves could yield 30 billion barrels of oil. And it's attracted not just Petrobras, but oil majors like Chevron, but also ExxonMobil and a Chinese consortium. After 10 years of trying, Petrobras got approval from the Brazilian government to finally drill on the eve of COP30, hosted by Brazil in Belém, promoting Brazil's green credentials, highlighting the Amazon, but with delegates now greeted by a protest message, COP30, welcome to the end of the Amazon free of oil.
It's very problematic. Brazil is a big oil producer. We are number 8 in the world, but the government had taken a decision to increase this production in the middle of the climate crisis.
The fight between climate politics and oil ambition is playing out in Oiapoque, and that's why we traveled here, starting our journey in Macapá on the mighty Amazon River. Then driving 7 hours north past swaths of cleared land and occasional fires burning away vegetation. The only highway north ends in wooden bridges and a dirt road. Oiapoque, rising from the river, lies in one of the most disadvantaged regions of Brazil. An oil bonanza could help reduce poverty. That's the government's promise. Boat driver Cleigenia Ribeiro tells us drilling for oil could lift all boats. How will it help you and your business? More people will come from different places, like workers, and sometimes we work with them on different services. Betting on black gold, new retail buildings and hotels are going up. In the riverfront kiosks, shop owner Marlena Cardozo is convinced the oil drilling will bring prosperity, not risks. Do you worry, have any concerns about something happening to the environment because of the oil drilling?
I
don't think so, because from the studies they're doing, I believe if it happens, they have the capacity to quickly take care of the losses. Petrobras is a point of pride for many Brazilians, more than just an oil company. It says it's met all the environmental tests and simulation drills required by the government to get the exploration